program to help you clearly identify, here is the areas where you really have passions, and therefore, and here's where I have skills or I don't have skills. So I'm missing these skills. How can I close those gaps? I want to do these things. And then we help you to put that plan together and give you the step-by-step roadmap of what it is going to take for you to get from point A to point B, typically in a very short period of time, a short number of weeks. You can figure this out and you will know with confidence, that's the direction I really, really want to go. And that's the key to it. And sometimes it's just hard to do it on yourself. You know, like looking at yourself going, who am I? And did that come out right? It's like editing your own words on paper, editing your own materials, very difficult. So finding professional groups is another good way to help you figure out, is the direction I'm going and the kind of stuff that I'm getting into, is that really what I want? To answer your question about how do I know, or how do I figure it out? So inside of professional groups, you can get a lot of feedback about what other people do. When I was graduating college, I had a degree in mechanical engineering, and my buddies were all sitting behind desks, and that were graduated a year or two ahead of me, and they were doing desk work. And I realized suddenly I didn't want to go and do desk work. I wanted to be interacting with people. And I switched my degree in my last year to industrial engineering and managed to graduate in a year and one semester with just a complete switch to industrial engineering, because I realized that was not going to work for me. It wasn't going to make me a happy person. So I figured it out because I was part of groups of people that could tell me what was coming ahead, what was their life looking like, and then I could figure out what I wanted to do. Perfect companies, and finding the perfect companies and people is the next step in that journey, Shri, in terms of researching. Like with Dean Ditto, he went out and he figured out which companies are in the space that I want to look at. Who do I already know that knows somebody in those companies? How can I get introduced to other people in those companies and discover, love this company, hate that company, the culture here really sucks, I don't want anything to do with this. So that's, again, finding those companies. And then, you know, as you go along, just practicing your career identity stories, these star stories, choosing the right stories. We all have a lot of stories and a lot of accomplishments in our many years of working, but picking the stories that align best with the thing you want to go do. So then that's the stories that you keep repeating and saying, you know, different versions of them, or building new stories around that are related to the stuff you want to go do. So people consistently know you for the thing you want to go do. Then when you're in conversations, asking for introductions to the new ideal connections. In Dean's case, he wanted to be involved in biotechnology. It's just been a passion of his. And so he did struggle before we ever got started for many months to figure out, like, what direction do I want to go, and how, in the back of his mind, he wanted to get involved with healthcare, but how could he step into healthcare was proving quite challenging. So when we brought him into the accelerator program, when we started the conversation back in October of 2020, he quickly figured out, for him, similar to what Barry was saying, being involved in biotech was a great step to get in there, because it wasn't as limiting for him as a CFO without having the past background in the biosciences and healthcare fields, et cetera. So he's able to find a pathway to get into something that he was very passionate about, and work through the process of having the conversations and things. I'm going to share with you a little bit about exactly what he did and how he did it to land in his new position by December of 2020, the end of. And he started on, like, the first week of January. We were like drinking the champagne, toasting the cool new deal. So some of the things that he did was he started pursuing, taking advantage of that learning curve and pursuing content around the biotech space, and getting involved with associations that are in the bioscience area. And so he got familiar with more people that were in the industry and the things going on in the industry and some of the issues that were happening in there. And in that way, introduced himself and got himself connected into the community where he could be part of the conversations. So that's, and now he's at CFO at Midocene Innovation Group, which does biotech innovation. So it was a great merging of things that of his past backgrounds and a way to bring it together towards something that he was really interested in. And I bring this up because it's really important, especially at this time in your career, to think about your passions and let that help to set your career identity. It should be focused on your passions. So the process steps that he went through and digging in a little bit more on the details was first finding the right kinds of companies that he wanted to talk to, then figuring out who's the people in the company that he should get to know. And then from there, and I got to move this out of my way, I have a little screen sitting in my way, understanding about digging in on their backgrounds. What are their interests? Where does he have commonality with those people such that he could have the right kinds of conversations with them? Ultimately, after he researched this and then redid his content, his professional summary, his star stories, he selected the star stories that would best appeal and fit to the new place that he wanted to go to. And then also joined a group, some of you may be familiar with, Colorado Bioscience, and participated in some of the activities there. And all of these things helped him to get to a more customized story that would fit to the biotech world, and reaching out to medical device companies was a big part of what he did. Neil Smith is another great example, a gentleman who has an extensive background in health systems. So he's on the other side of this coin, and he had 10 years in clinical health, focused on allergies, struggled with, I want to do something totally new. I want to, get out in the world. Wasn't sure if he should go get a job job, in whatever he wanted to do. When we started working through the process together, he was able to reset his direction, figure out a new personal brand, and ended up launching a telehealth business. So he stepped over into the entrepreneurial space and became a founder, and happens to be in allergy solutions. So similarly, he recognized he wanted to use some of the things he had in his past, but he also wanted to go in a new direction, and he didn't want to be part of the traditional healthcare system that he was in. So many of you may be facing that kind of a dilemma of, I don't want to be part of the traditional stuff that I have been doing. I want to step out and do something really new. In which case, I would encourage you to talk to Mr. Scott about Techstars, because there's amazing opportunities there. And as a mentor, you get to find out about all the different kinds of things that are happening. And he or I can happily connect you into the various cohorts that are there helping bring investors together, bring in ideation, innovation, and all these different things. If you want to learn about new industries and be involved in a way that doesn't completely say, I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to, jump into something new, just taking baby steps, finding your way in to help mentor others, bring your business knowledge to small startups in the space that you're interested in, can be a very effective way to learn about that. And a lot of people get confused about what is personal brand. Well, in a nutshell, it is your identity. What you do want people to think of you, and what do they actually think of you? And then there's what you don't want them to think of you. So Elizabeth was a great example of this. She doesn't want to be thought of in terms of manufacturing, like operations for manufacturing. That's not her shtick. It's not her thing. She does want you to remember about her as someone who is brilliant at ops, managing people, getting those teams pulled together, and specifically in service-based companies where customer experience and that driven by service is really key to the success of growth. So that's a good example of career identity. The other aspects of career identity in this case would be things around the size of companies that she likes to work with, 50 to 100 people. So that's a really nice size company. So we kind of have a sense of industry, we have a sense of size and scope. And what would be great is if she would have been able to tell me, if I would have thought to ask her for an example of something that she is really proud of, that she has done with a company in that size, in the operational aspects. Then that really helps close the whole piece about her career identity. And when should any of us think of Elizabeth, and when should we tell somebody about, you need to have Elizabeth on that panel, or you need to bring her onto your board under these circumstances, or you should talk to her about hiring her away from her current fun thing because she is awesome at this. That's when you know you have a really great career identity, when someone understands these things about you. All right, so why is this important, and what's the power behind and the difference behind having an identity? Popping up polling questions. I don't mean to pop up. Why is it important to have a career identity, and what happens when you do, and what happens when you don't have a solid career identity? So the names have been changed in this particular example to protect the innocent, of course, but this is Phil, meet Phil. He's the COO in manufacturing. Within 30 days of actively looking, he was discussing a new COO role and was already conducting interviews, and he landed his next position in 45 days. Pretty quick, given that the national average at the C-suite level is running about 9 months at this point, from 2020 into 2021. It used to be, on average, you could look at 6 months, and a lot of them, the higher up you go, it takes about 12 months to land new positions, especially if you're being passive about that, where you're in a job and you're looking quietly for another job. Then we have the example of Greg as a CFO in a SaaS tech background. He was uncertain where to start, who to contact, what to say when he reached out, and after 6 months, he was still looking. So this is what happens when we don't have a clear identity and a clear game plan about what are we going to do to help other people understand who we are, stay in touch with them, which is all part of your personal brand and or career identity. So if we wish to avoid this scenario, what do we need to do? All right. So again, my name's Patrice Barber, serial entrepreneur, background in MarTech. So what I've done is, as a recovering engineer, brought all of my background in ops, in manufacturing, and MarTech, so the technology side of marketing, to bring that together to develop a platform and an entire process that people use to help you develop your career brand, get yourself out there, known as a clear, known entity, and end up in all kinds of fun opportunities and conversations. So that's what I do. I serve as a board member on 2 different companies that are privately held, and as a speaker on this topic, as well as other topics around entrepreneurship, which is why Scott and I have so much fun together with Techstars and RBC and Thai Global, all types of things, and SOAP, our Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. So spend a lot of time mentoring others after having done 3 successful exits about what you should never do as an entrepreneur. So all kinds of fun there. The key thing about this new platform that we've developed and an app to go with it is that we're helping you to do the one thing that is really difficult in all of this, which is staying connected. Most of us can figure out, how do we get a resume put together? How do we get our LinkedIn profile updated? How can we create some interesting marketing materials? We might even figure out on an Excel sheet, here's a list of people I should talk to. And after about the 20th person on that list, it gets really difficult to remember, what was the conversation I had with person number 1? When should I reach back out to person number 5? And what are the interests of person number 7? We don't remember those things. That is what we developed this platform and app to do, where inside of it, you can go in and get education through our accelerator program, and you can get one-on-one coaching where you get connected to a coach to help you work through some of the challenges if you're having a hard time connecting these dots, or our concierge, where we are actually helping you get it all done for you because you're too busy with your head down. So that's kind of who we are. Kristen Kenton would normally be with me on this particular presentation, but she had a last minute emergency. She's a recruiter that I've partnered with for many years, and she is brilliant at understanding about how to build your sphere of influence, very well connected, works with a lot of PE firms and VC firms, and specifically focuses on women executives and women leaderships. And she runs the Executive Women Summit program as well, which about 2 to 3 times a year, she'll invite a cohort of female leaders to come in and participate across, I think it's a 6-month program, where they are learning, and I've served as a mentor there as well, learning about how to develop their leadership skills and really become ready for next position. So a big advocate for the candidate, while in fact she does retained search recruiting. So that's a little bit about Kristen. And today we're going to be talking about this whole concept of mastering your personal brand specifically focused on career identity. And as I mentioned when we got started, some of the themes we cover is creating a powerful network, career, leadership, business insights, and I'm going to share some of those insights with you in a moment. Really important things that are changing in our world around us that will impact all of you, and you need to know about this stuff. And then thought leadership, and how do you develop that? Many of you on this call today, I suspect, are really focused on developing your thought leadership, which is kind of cool as you are wanting to attract new opportunities and new things going on. Barry's one of those, and Scott would be another good example of that. And Scott does a good job, and as does Barry, of being out there and being willing to speak to other people and things like that, which helps on your thought leadership as well as getting articles and things. So stats for 2021, Bureau of Labor Statistics is giving us, and a few sources down here I put on the bottom. There was a latter survey of 50,000 employees. There's some amazing things going on as we are unwinding from the pandemic, or getting on the other side of it at least. Some things that are never going to change again. They're never going to go back. I think we're all going to be seeing the hybrid environments and things, hybrid work environments. But really the question for each of us is, how does that impact us as individuals? How does it impact our ability to find new opportunities? Where should we be looking? How should we be looking? That's different than what we used to do before. And as leaders in our positions, what should we be watching out for? What are some of the things that we should be, aware of that are changing and we should be cautious about? So first off, we went up to 9.8 million people, an unemployment rate of 6.1%. And that was from, a considerably lower amount here, just, back before the pandemic, pre-pandemic. So big numbers there. 6.6 million people as of April who would like to have a job, who identify themselves as saying, I actually would aggressively, actively want to have a job. An unfortunately large number here is that women in this particular crisis were disproportionately losing their jobs, left or lost their jobs, about 4x that versus men. In our last one, it was a little bit more even. And a primary reason for that, to be fair, it's not about women and men and that women were discriminated against and they were all booted out of their awesome jobs. That's not what happened. What happened was that women have traditionally chosen to be in jobs that are more client facing. They are more in the industries, the service driven industries that were shut down during the pandemic. So it's the kind of businesses that were both most effective, had a lot of women, more women in them. So that's a big part of this. However, we also know that even for professional women, there is a big challenge about how can we help women come back to work, and how can we as male leaders or as leaders period, how can we be aware of this and cognizant, and what do we need to do to think about that? So it's something worth considering. A big number that's also looming is 67% of professionals, that's you guys as peers, 100K up, they are planning on quitting in 2021. Now, what do I mean about that? I don't mean they're all just going to quit and go, eat bonbons on the living room floor. That's not what I mean. What I mean is they're going to be quitting their current job in order to go find something else. We will have a lot of people continuing to take large packages. We still have the very prevalent demographic number around 10,000 people per day who are baby boomers were prior to the pandemic exiting the workforce, either by choice or not so much by choice, because they felt like they may have been discriminated against for age, or they were discriminated against for a variety of other reasons. Most, notably, were they relevant? Is that something that they were staying on top of? So this number is still really big, but here's why down here, 15% pay increases. This is where people are going to get their pay increases. No longer are we able to actually get ourselves promoted into the next levels up and get the kind of pay increases that we used to see, say, a decade or more ago. So this is all about our culture and flattening of organizations, eliminating positions. So many of you at the director and above level are seeing this and you're questioning, what's going on with salaries? Why aren't salaries going up at my level? Why can't I make more money? if I have more experience and I'm bringing more value, it feels like I should be able to make more money. And the answer, unfortunately, is with the flattening of organizations, we need to look at this as the option. And as employers and people in companies, we need to be highly aware of this little subtle fact going on. And how are we going to prevent mass exodus of our leadership teams? What are we doing to keep them retained when pay is a big part, number 1 through 5 of reasons why people leave? It is in the top 5. And then what are we going to do about that? If we are looking for something, how are we going to compete in this massive churn that we're looking at? And this is a higher than usual number, by the way. In Neil's case, when we got started, we started in March of 2019, and I want to share this with you because the pace at which he was able to accomplish what he accomplished was a little bit unusual, admittedly, and a little bit remarkable. So all of that, but it was a very impactful path. So he launched his plans. We came up with a general game plan about how will you launch this new business as a founder, put together his personal branding around that, pulled together a board of to align with him, and he actually brought on a co-founder. They did a pilot with an ENT program that brought in their allergy solutions, and then launched in 2020. And then within a year, they were getting funding to take it to the next level. So that's how quickly, and I would say this is a pretty fast-tracked example, but it is how quickly you can make pivotal changes in your career, whether you're trying to go start and be a founder or a co-founder, or you just want to be involved in fun and exciting things. It can happen. You just have to choose how you're gonna go about it. So a little bit about personal brand framework. So what goes into making up the framework of your personal brand? So there's the obvious of who am I? And this is what we just experienced at the beginning of the call. What industry, what size, what functional area? What I was sharing with you about Elizabeth is if I had been on my top of my game, I would have also asked for a bit of tell me about a moment when you were really proud, some example, because when we can weave in a star story as part of our normal introduction, it helps people really understand the full picture of who you are and what you are an expert at. And this is really key to it. What can I offer? The reason why we want to be clear about what can I offer is because ultimately we want to get introductions. So one of the reasons I had you during the very beginning when you're putting your name and email in on the chat is to say something about like, Stephen Westberg is a fractional CFO, and Kurt is looking for certain kinds of things. So by saying you could answer the question, who's a great introduction for me, or who's a great connection for me, or here's the kind of things that I can bring value to, one side or the other. The purpose is ultimately to have people clearly understand who would be a great introduction or connection for you. So in the case of Elizabeth, a great introduction for her is people in the C-suite, director and above level in smaller companies of 50 to 100 that are service-based companies that maybe have challenges around how are we keeping our operations going, especially as we bring workers back to the workforce. So that might be a great example of someone that Elizabeth would be very skilled at helping and would be excited to have a conversation with them about, tell me about your challenges. It's not about finding a job. It's just about finding connections. And so that gets us to this, who is a great connection for me? It is about uniquenesses to the specific industry. If you're in manufacturing, you have to understand ISO 9001, 10, et cetera. Those, a different set of compliance issues. And to Shree's point, it's about having that learning curve. However, we're going to jump back in here and let's just talk about how you can do that, because there's a lot of people that will want to step over into healthcare related initiatives as an example because they have a passion about it. Like they want to be involved in solving the really amazing, challenging issues that we have in our healthcare system. So they want to be a part of it. They have a personal passion, or maybe you have a personal passion about being, involved with social impact. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, it's important that you follow it. I love to get connected to executives who are trying to figure out what is my personal brand and where can I go with my career relative to that, or how do I make a change in a different direction? How do I do something where I'm a little bit more passionate about it maybe I'll make a little bit more money, but mainly I just want to figure out like, how do I get a handle on my career and get to that next level?